Congressman Joe Courtney has represented the 2nd District of Connecticut since 2006, home to Electric Boat Shipyard in Groton and the submarine base in New London. He serves on the House Armed Services, Education and Workforce, Agricultural Committees. Representative Courtney has taken an active role in shaping our nation's naval and shipbuilding policies, serving both as the vice-ranking member of the Seapower and Projection Forces Subcommittee and co-chairman of the bipartisan Congressional Shipbuilding Caucus. Congressman Courtney has worked hard to educate his colleagues on the need for robust investment in our naval and domestic shipbuilding needs and the critical role that our maritime industry plays for our nation's economy. Let's give Rep. Courtney a warm welcome.
Thank you, Admiral, for your kind introduction and your patience. We were just doing the defense authorization bill, which I kind of punched my green button and headed for the exit. It looked good, but I don't have the final tally, so my staff may email me while I'm up here. So, but in any case, obviously critically important to keep the ball moving forward in terms of a lot of the issues that I know you've talked about here today. And another example of where there are some actual bright spots of bipartisan collaboration. The defense authorization bill is something that has passed almost 50 times. I think, I forget the exact number, going back to the 1950s. And this year was obviously, like a lot of other issues, a lot of question marks about whether the gridlock was going to prevent it moving forward, but it really it looked like a very solid bipartisan vote, and again, the prognosis in the Senate next week is certainly looking very good as well. So, what I would say is that these conferences, which are focused here in Washington, are critically important, in my opinion, in terms of trying to, again, foster the environment that allows people to, again, even in this incredibly sort of polarized environment on so many other issues, to be able to stay focused on the need to, again, get critical authorizing legislation like this passed. I know some folks that are here, a lot of you looking around the room look like sort of first-time flyers in terms of having the chance to introduce myself and say hello here today. When I speak before a lot of groups, again, as somebody who's not a veteran, who, again, never worked in the industry, but, as the Admiral said, from day one when I was elected, this is obviously almost an existential issue in Eastern Connecticut. The Shipbuilding Council, actually, we did an event with them in September where they, again, broke down by congressional district the number of shipbuilding jobs, and the 2nd Congressional District is number 2 in the nation for obvious reasons, with the EB presence, 8,000 to 9,000 people at the Groton facility, another 3,000 or so over in Quonset Point. It obviously has been an issue that I've been sort of very much engaged in, and the Seapower Subcommittee has been, starting with Gene Taylor and Todd Aiken, and now with Randy, we, I think, have really made a difference in terms of whether it was the plus up in 2007 to get the 2 sub a year build rate kick-started and protecting that when there was going to be a dip in the shipbuilding plan in 2012 to only a 9 sub buy in the Block 4 contract. We were able to work with Sean Stackley to come up with incremental funding language and find some additional funds to keep it moving forward at the 2 a year build rate. And then this year's, I think, accomplishment in terms of the Seapower Committee getting the Ohio Replacement Program National Sea-Based Deterrent Fund in law now, again, setting up an off-shipbuilding budget account to deal with what I think is, in many respects, almost more of a challenge even than sequestration and the Budget Control Act, which I'm kind of an optimist on, believe it or not, in terms of Congress's ability to modify that. But the ORP program, if you look at trying to absorb that within the shipbuilding account and what the ripple effect it would have on just almost every other program, I mean, it is a problem that we've got to sort of get out of the bar talk phase and start getting into the policy and legislative phase. And getting that account in law, I think, is something that, again, originated in the House Seapower Subcommittee and again, has made its way all the way through the process. So again, I am somebody who, despite the fact that there certainly are huge challenges that are facing us, both from a strategic standpoint, and I heard Randy kind of went through the drill earlier here today. And you know, if knock on wood, if I'm able to move from vice ranking to full ranking in January, because Mike McIntyre didn't run again this year, you know, I look forward to, again, continuing that collaborative approach on the Seapower Subcommittee. But again, when I speak in front of various groups, I always try and reference a book that some of you may have read it, which is Churchill and Seapower, written by Christopher Bell, which is you know, really interesting sort of historical treatise in terms of Churchill's work on sea power issues going back to really before the First World War up until he was Prime Minister in World War II and later. And one of the observations in the book by Mr. Bell was something that I think is important sometimes for us to remember in terms of dealing with the Congress, as frustrating as it can be. And here's what Mr. Bell said. One of the most astute observations in Alfred Thayer Mahan's classic study, The Influence of Sea Power on History, first published in 1890, is that a nation's sea power, that is, its ability to use the seas in times of peace and war alike to further its ends, also depends on the actions of its civilian statesmen and politicians. They are the ones, after all, who decide how much of the nation's wealth to allocate to navies and to the other elements of sea power, who determine broad priorities in wartime and who have the final word in matters of peace and war. And I think that was kind of a nice sort of way to underscore that, again, we have such outstanding talent in the Navy, and you know, it's been such an honor to work in the committee with you know, the staff and you know, Admiral Roughhead and Admiral Greenert, you know, to again deal with some of these challenges that I mentioned earlier. But in many respects, the challenge that we have before us, which, you know, Randy laid out and is going to be, again, fast approaching in the 114th Congress, is that with the changing of the guard that's happening in the Senate Armed Services Committee, there's obviously Mike McIntyre leaving and a number of others in the House Armed Services Committee, a whole host of new freshmen that are going to be sworn in, you know, in a matter of weeks, is that, you know, we really have our work cut out for us to make sure that we get people up to speed on these challenges, which, again, as everybody in this room knows, you know, are in some respects existential for our country, but certainly highly urgent. And what I look forward to in terms of the Sea Power Committee is immediately assembling these new members, in particular, getting Sean Stackley in there and doing a Shipbuilding 101, you know, tutorial for these new members to really get them as fluent and up to speed as they possibly can. Because I sure remember when I first came to town here with the acronyms that just, you know, get sort of, you know, thrown at you nonstop on the House Armed Services Committee. It can be bewildering. And again, in many respects, you know, that's really what I think is so important. And the Institute obviously can be a big partner in terms of helping us, you know, with particularly the new members that are coming into town very soon. Because look I mean, as I mentioned, my district, you know, making the case for sea power is pretty easy, and frankly, it is for Randy and it is for Rob Whitman, who's my co-chairman on the Shipbuilding Caucus. In many respects, the challenge is, frankly, the heartland and the interior districts, where people are dealing with all other kinds of issues, whether it's agriculture or you know, just the local economies. As Tip O'Neill said, you know, all politics is local. That's what is really front and center for people, and how we sort of engage with them and make them aware of the need to move forward is really the challenge in terms of making sure that, you know, with all the great information and data that groups like the Institute assemble, that it's actually going to be executed on and it's going to be utilized by these new members. You know, one of the in my opinion, most effective ways to communicate, it was something that was developed about a decade or so ago before I came to Congress, which was the Submarine Industrial Base Coalition, which again is kind of like a grassroots supplier organization that meets on a regular basis in Washington and is basically got its reach into about 48 states throughout the country. And when they come together, they get their update in terms of what's going on with the budget and the defense bill, and then they fan out all across the Hill. And when they go to those member offices and Senate offices, I mean, the issue is not really some sort of esoteric or, you know, academic question about, you know, sort of sea power issues. It's a localized message in terms of the fact that these priorities are critical to the member districts. it's worked so well that now the carrier sector has developed its own carrier industrial base coalition. I think imitation is the highest form of flattery. And again, I think in both of those instances, when, again, we were successful in terms of protecting the refueling of the George Washington, having the carrier coalition fan out across the Hill and make members aware that this is not a Virginia issue, or certainly not a Connecticut issue. It's an issue that really is going to affect your district if the carrier program really has this sort of inconsistent commitment from Congress. So in terms of looking forward to the 114th Congress, I would tell you that, as far as I'm concerned, number one, I'm going to be, unabashed in terms of pushing forward a very strong shipbuilding agenda. Mike was a great member, but his focus, because of the Marine presence in his district, he was more on the Expeditionary Force agenda. I'm going to be certainly much more on the shipbuilding. Not that I have anything against the Marines. We're going to help the Commandant with all of their issues as well. But the fact is that we all know what the challenges are. Admiral Greenert has been having individual meetings with members to kind of educate folks in terms of the coverage issues that we have, both in terms of our undersea fleet and our surface fleet, and we've obviously got plenty of work to do. But as I said, I'm somebody who's an optimist, because I've certainly experienced firsthand the fact that Congress has actually made an impact in terms of getting budgets and shipbuilding plans from both administrations, the Bush administration and the Obama administration, and we were able to not just sort of get forced to swallow it. We actually recrafted it and reshaped it in a way that has now got us to the point. I was with Secretary Mabus on Monday, and he was talking about the fact that before he came into office the 4 prior years, it was, I think, less than 20 ships were under contract, and there are 60 today. And so, there is some momentum that's moving in the right direction. The challenge before us, obviously, is not to obviously be complacent on that in any stretch, but to build on that. And to use the opportunity of new members that are coming into town to educate them and to move forward in terms of trying to deal with the issues of sequestration and the Budget Control Act being modified, and obviously dealing with the ORP cost, which is again something that I think is really important for people to stay focused on. It's not just a ballistic sub issue. It's an issue that affects the entire fleet if we don't do this right. So with that, if I maybe take a few questions, be happy to, and I know Rob is fast approaching, so I want to make sure he gets some floor time as well.
Yes, sir. Hi, Kevin Winston. I had a question. That George H.W. Bush has returned from, I think, about a 9.5-month deployment. So how does that factor into with you and your fellow members about the wear and tear on our equipment, but also our sailors and their families?
Well, again, it's this is one of those issues where if you asked the average member about the Bush, I mean, frankly, you would get a blank stare back from people, and that's where certainly our subcommittee can do a lot in terms of giving a platform to talk about these issues of deployments. I mean, we certainly, I hear about it in Groton, because the extended deployments now are 6 months or almost a thing of the past now, and it's somewhat of an overlooked issue in terms of just what it's doing to the workforce and the manpower in the system. So everybody's following what's going on in Syria right now. I think people forget that those airstrikes are coming off of carriers, that are working like crazy to make that possible. And frankly, there's a gap in terms of, I think, member awareness about what the impact that is having on sailors and their families. Yep.
Sir, good afternoon. Thanks for taking your time to speak with us. I'm Lieutenant J.G. Chris O'Keefe. I work with Admiral Fanta, Director of Surface Warfare at OPNAV, and day 2 of the job, so I'm new, and I understand you have some freshmen, congressmen rolling in. What do you need from me as part of the strategic messaging arm of N96 to engage in more discussion like that? What do I need to do? What should I pass to my boss? That kind of thing to help engage more fully in this discussion as in his role as Director of Surface Warfare.
Sure. So again, we're if you look at the schedule in January and February, we're going to be in town quite a bit. I mean, in many congresses in the past, as I think a lot of the folks in this room know, I mean, generally speaking, January there's the swearing in, and then everybody kind of heads back to their district for a month or so. Not this time. So you're going to have actually an opportunity to have people in their offices probably the first 6 weeks of this Congress. And I think the process of committee selection is going to move pretty quickly, so you're going to have a good opportunity to identify particularly a lot of these new members on armed services and Seapower. And I think certainly making the calls and making the courtesy visits early on and introducing yourself to these folks and explain what you can offer them, I think is obviously sort of the first step. And again, the committee itself, I think, has to sort of think through our strategy in terms of the hearing process to really try and give people a little bit of an opportunity, like a Shipbuilding 101 with the Navy, to really educate people just in terms of just the basics as they begin a process that moves pretty fast. And again, our office would be happy to assist you with that in terms of giving you any tips about key people that we think you should target.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Representative, we'd like to give you this book, The Accidental Admiral. It's Jim Stavridis' memoir about his time as the European commander. And thank you, sir, for coming over today.
It's a pleasure.
This was terrific.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. Good to see you. Yeah.